All right, I think we're live. So welcome everyone to another live stream here on the Maran Motoring YouTube channel. And Happy New Year to all of you, the first live of 2025 here. Hope you're all having a great first week of 2025 so far. And like all the other usual live streams here, we're going to go for about 2 hours or so. We're going to give party answering to anyone who does a super chat or a super thanks, as well as anyone who's a member there with the green usernames. They always get that party answering. If you'd also like that, there's always a link in the description and other join buttons elsewhere on the page here. But anyway, yeah, hope you're all doing well so far. Thanks for hanging out here on a Sunday night, and happy to get back to the Sunday live streams here for the year. So, I see we have Harsha, Brian, Anthony, Cars, Dave, Chad, Danny, and Cargod, and Kyle, Raphael, Wheatman, Shane. Thanks so much for stopping by, everyone. I see Harsha says, I just came back from India 2 days ago. The first thing I noticed after getting off the plane was how big every vehicle is compared to what sizes are popular in India. Thanks for the love, guys. Yeah, it's really, I mean, so much of the world, gets by just fine with much smaller vehicles, and obviously there's geographical differences that require different things sometimes, but it's really hilarious how people in America need enormous vehicles whenever 90% of driving is done solo or whatever the statistic is. So it's always funny to see that, and hope you had a great time in India though. And I see Brian and Anthony saying Happy New Year as well. And Cars, Dave, and Chad. And Danny says, hello, Matt and everyone, and Happy New Year. My interesting/rare spots of the week was a 10th gen Civic Si that was not modified at all. That is pretty rare. And a 1988 Toyota Camry LE V6 wagon for life. That's awesome. My fun spot of the week, kind of up your alley, Danny. I saw a 3rd gen Camry today for the first time in many years. I feel like I never see 3rd gens, at least around here, ever. It's always, the 4th gens, even sometimes 2nd gens, but never the 3rd. I don't know why, because they seem to be super reliable still, but they kind of disappeared from the road. So I was super surprised to see that today. And great spots. And Cars says, last week I saw a 1st gen Subaru Forester. Also saw 2 car transporters loaded with Cybertrucks heading north through Oregon from California. Ironically, they were followed by a Volvo 700 series wagon. Nice. Very good. Everyone's got the wagon love going. That's great to see. And yeah, 1st gen Foresters are always fun. I see those fairly often around here. Obviously we're in Subaru country up here, so a lot of those things, people keep them going far longer than they probably should just because they love them so much. I've been seeing Cybertrucks almost on the daily at this point around here, and Beth actually was today, whenever we saw the first one we saw today, I saw a second one later, but they are pretty common. I'm actually kind of surprised they've become as common as they have been already. And let me see. Wheatman says hello from Northern California and Happy New Year all. And let me see. I see Barada's asking, does Matt film POV videos, GoPro on the head? I do not. This has been coming up a lot in the past few weeks, interestingly enough. I'm not sure why the interest is now getting higher. They're great video formats. There's a lot of car YouTubers that do a very good job of doing those already. Chris Amos from The Winding Road does fantastic, POV videos. There's a few others as well. I personally just don't feel comfortable doing them. Those things, I don't like showing my speed, and especially since my channel is more about performance-oriented stuff, watching me do the speed limit everywhere probably wouldn't excite very many of you, and that's what I would have to do in order to, protect myself as far as blatantly showing my tack, my speed, and the surroundings in my driving, with my voice while I'm talking. It's very incriminating. So you can blur the speedometer and stuff, but it's still that POV view seems to be kind of one of the ones that seems a little more sketchy from a legal standpoint. So I'd love to do POV stuff though, if we don't have to worry about speed limits. That would be something that would be so easy to do, because it can be done in basically one take. And maybe cut out some boring stuff if you sit behind traffic, but otherwise it's zero effort. You just drive and talk. But unfortunately, yeah, I kind of like doing my stuff the way I like doing it, for a variety of reasons. But great question, because again, everyone has been asking a lot recently for some reason. And Luke says, my Eruption Green Maverick Lariat starts production tomorrow. That's awesome. Hope it gets shipped out soon, and it doesn't get held up with some shipping delays that sometimes have happened to those. Hopefully you get it quickly, and great choice on the color there as well. And let me see. OG Skywalker says, I've always wanted to watch one of these. What up, Matt and everyone else? Thanks for stopping by. Glad you're able to make it here. And it should be a good one here. We'll go for about 2 hours and have some fun, hopefully. Cam Jam says, spot of the week was a C8Z06. Just saw it about 2 hours ago. Last drive before the big snowstorm down here in Maryland. Yeah, we're supposed to be getting it here over, I think, like 4 a.m. or something. It's supposed to hit around here. I think they're saying 3 to 5 inches. Which is enough to make everyone around here go out and panic buy toilet paper and whatever else, milk, eggs, all the usual panic buys. So yeah, we will see how much of that actually materializes. It's often, they talk a big game, these weathermen, and a lot of times it doesn't turn out to be true, at least as far as snow precipitations go, at least around here. And I mean, Maryland's probably kind of a similar kind of thing where it's not too bad usually, but we'll see. And Luke says, I just hope the negative equity in my 2020 TLX isn't too bad. I hope estimated payoff is lower than my total balance. Well, yeah, you can always, kind of figure that stuff out ahead of time too. So there's no surprises. You can call up your lender, see what, payoff would be. They usually give you a 30-day payoff. You can figure that out, know what your payoff is, know what Kelley Blue Book is to, kind of figure out where you're at there. And, you can kind of start those negotiations ahead of time if you'd like, just so you kind of know what's what and have everything locked in there, so again, they don't try and, do a carpet pull on you, while you're in the dealership there with your brand new shiny car there, distorting your judgment a little bit. So hopefully you can get that all sorted out. I hope it all works out for you, Luke. And Jonah, thank you so much for the first super chat of the night. He says, what are your thoughts on the Mustang Raptor? I mean, it'd be fun if they did it. There's been a little bit of a rumor about that, but I think Ford actually shot it down at some point last year and was like, we're not doing that. It could be them bluffing or just, playing dumb for now. I'm not sure, but, I think it would make a lot of sense, and it would be kind of cool to see Mustang kind of take the 911 Dakar, Huracan Dorado kind of, idea, and then, apply it and bring it down to a more everyman price point, although it's still probably 75 grand at least, I'm guessing, for something like that, but would be really cool to see. And it's not something I would ever want, but, I think that there is certainly enough appeal there that they could make it, a success. I think they have to do something with S650 to make it more exciting, because yes, it's the last V8, and yes, they're going to get some Challenger and Camaro people that come over because it's like, well, I want a V8 manual. I got to go for the Mustang because it's the last game in town. You'll have some of that, but from what I saw, it sounds like 2024 sales for the Mustang were actually kind of weak. Someone even mentioned that the Mach-E outsold it, which I'm not entirely convinced of. I have to fact check this stuff, but Mustang sales, it seems like they haven't been doing super great this past year. So, yeah, they'll probably have a GT500 at some point and probably a few other things. But, I just think that, shaking it up a little bit and, reinvigorating the Mustang with some, fresh, exciting new stuff would be a good idea. So we'll see if they do it or not. Great question. Thanks so much, Jonah, for the super chat there. And let me see. Raphael says he has no car sightings. I was lucky enough to not leave home this week with single-digit. Sorry, it's loading more comments here. With single-digit temps and over 9 inches of snow. Wow! So you got a good amount already. That's impressive. Well, hopefully you didn't mind not leaving the house. But to me, there's some days here working from home where I don't mind just staying at home and doing my thing. And it's kind of odd because sometimes I'll go a couple of days and be like, oh, wow, I'm out in the world again, driving a car. Isn't this crazy? Because it's it definitely kind of messes with you after a while if you're in the house, for extended periods. But it certainly can be relaxing too. But I hope you had a good time there. And Jordan, thank you so much for being a member for 15 months now. I really appreciate it. He says, Nissan Xterra concept and Honda Zero Series concepts look similar with the taillights. Foresight? Could be. Maybe it's just everyone can see that the next styling trend is, okay, we've done the full width taillights. Now let's make them go up and over and down again. And maybe that is something that will become more popular. We'll have to see what the next trend is. But yeah, it's interesting. I'm curious. Yeah, this coming week, I think even maybe possibly tomorrow, we'll see that new Honda Zero Series SUV. Again, it seems like it's very concepty, so it's like, what's the point of even showing that if it's so far off from the production version? But interesting to see what they're thinking, at least as far as an electric SUV from Honda that isn't the Prologue already. But let me see here. Other questions. So Luke says, before I ordered the Maverick, I debated between Crown Signia and 25 Camry, but I thought the little bit would be useful. Yeah, I mean, Mavericks are really, great, useful little cars for sure. And you can put a cab on the back of it, and then you'll have, basically probably as much, length as a Crown Signia in the back there too. And just such a good price point still, I think, for Maverick, especially if you go for the, hybrid version. And Kyle says Maverick Lobo model looks very unique. Not 100% sure on the price though. Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, if they said pricing yet, I don't remember if that's but regardless, I'm just excited that the sport truck's coming back. And I hope that this is a trend that returns in full force. I think it'd be really cool to see more of those. Whether we're talking about the small vehicles or large SUV or large trucks and even SUVs. I'd love to see the GMC Typhoon and Cyclone and all those kind of come back. I can dream, but it'd be fun. And Kyle, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate it, and happy to see some familiar faces that are able to get their memberships back, and I think maybe 1 or 2 new ones there as well. So thank you so much, Kyle, for your generosity. Hope you're doing well too. And let me see. So Austin says, "Hey Matt, Happy New Year. Are you going to buy a drone in addition to upgrading your videos to 4K?" Holding off on both of those for now. Drones are fun. I was hanging out with my friend over the New Year holiday here, and he's got the Mavic 3 Pro DJI, and we were just flying it around just for fun, just just playing around with it, because I don't really play around with drones a whole lot. I see everyone using them on press trips and stuff all the time, but I never have really played around with them myself. So it was really cool to check out. It's so expensive for a shot that it might be appreciated by some people, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of extra time. It's again, a big investment up front there to get a good quality one, and then you got to be careful about where you fly it, and there's just a lot of hoops. And I'm very, very streamlined, very minimalistic with the amount of time that I put into doing the filming component of it, because the editing side is so labor intensive. So I try and keep my filming to about 3 hours or so, and most of that is driving. Maybe an hour in a parking lot, doing the stand up and the interior, B-roll and exterior stuff. But most of that's just me being on the road, giving impressions, and editing that down into that 20 to 30 minute video you see. But if I had to then go to a drone friendly park, try and do some shots that way. And then doing like a lot of these people that either live out in the middle of nowhere or have the luxury of having a track at their disposal or something, they can do the cool, like following, like, video game style shots right behind the car. I know some people kind of blended those in with just doing Insta360 shots too, where you have the invisible pole kind of thing you can do. But all that stuff is just, it's a lot more work and time. And if I'm then spending, half an hour flying a drone around, and, I mean, they're nice shots for sure. But then if I want to be having the drone in motion, I could have it kind of follow me, but that'd be low speed stuff. That can be a little sketchy still. It's not perfect with the tech for that stuff. And again, I have to be in a place where there's no other cars around, no other people around. So this drone's not flying into people or cars or, falling or whatever. And so it's just a little more labor intensive than I personally like. If I had someone helping me, or I had, an entire day to just goof around and film and just, just goof off, it'd be fun. But I'm so crunched on time that, stuff like that. And I've kind of tested the waters, because some manufacturers do provide a few drone shots here and there that I do include in my reviews. And I think I can probably count on one hand how many comments I got about drone shots that I already included in some of the videos last year. No one seems to really care that I've noticed. Sure, maybe if I put it in every single video and featured it heavily, maybe I'd get a little bit more, affirmation that that's something that, was worth doing. But yeah, it's just usually I just use the manufacturer drone stuff if they have it. And that's a fun addition to have a new viewpoint, but just not something that's realistic for me to incorporate at this time. I think 4K is also another, thing that, I with more and more people watching on TVs where you are on a large screen and people are appreciating and needing that 4K resolution. It's something that I would like to do for the car reviews eventually. That would also involve about maybe $1,500 probably in camera upgrades in order to bring everything up to speed, since I do like doing 60 frames per second. If I did 30 frames per second, I could probably do 4K right now. I don't love the way 30 frames looks. I know some car reviews even go down to like 24 frames, but I love the realism and the immersion that you get with 60 frames personally. So, that means you got to have a higher quality camera that can do 4K 60 frames and not overheat when you're filming for, 20, 30 minutes straight. That kind of gets a little bit more challenging. So that's why you got to go up to more expensive gear and all that. So, we'll see how this year goes from a view standpoint, from a, just spare money kind of standpoint. If I can justify that, I'd like to. But I will say, and I think we talked about this in a past live last year, pulling up the videos, the reviews on our TV, at least. We don't have a massive TV. I think ours is like 50 inches. But like, it looks fine to me, and some others have said that it looks okay on a big screen. So, it's not something I'm in a huge rush to do, but I certainly would like to do 4K eventually for that. Because again, it seems like TV is just continuing to explode. But great questions, Austin. Thanks so much. And hopefully it's okay with you guys if I don't switch over to 4K for everything immediately. I mean, the weekly updates have been 4K for I think about a year and a half now, maybe even longer. And I guess people appreciate that, but again, no one really comments on, the fact that that's in 4K either. And honestly, switching to 4K didn't help views at all. It's like views have dropped, since that switch over. So I don't think there's any, incentive to invest that money if, it on the weekly updates, at least it hasn't really improved anything from a viewer experience standpoint or view count standpoint. So we'll see, but yeah, obviously it's inevitable. I will someday go to 4K, I promise. And let me see. Danny's asking what my thoughts are on the 1988 Honda Accord Aero Deck. The Aero Deck was a Civic hatch of its era, but made bigger. I honestly don't even remember the Aero Deck name. Man, you would be like awesome at like some kind of car trivia because you know all these obscure things that I've never even heard of. And I was around whenever those were probably still on the roads in widespread fashion. I still don't even remember the Aero Decks. Callie says, hi, Matt, it's 3 a.m. in Sweden, but just wanted to drop a message before I go to sleep. Well, thanks so much for stopping by and saying hi. Hope you're doing okay there in Sweden with the long winters up there. But I'd love to visit Sweden someday. It looks fantastic, so beautiful. It's on my bucket list of places I want to go to someday. So thanks for stopping by. And Brian, thank you so much for gifting a membership as well. I really appreciate that. Happy to see that Power Toys is able to get that as well. Let me see here. So Jag's asking, are GR Corollas losing interest in the market? I think so. I think there was certainly some of that. I know the hype has certainly died from a YouTube content standpoint. And I think from market standpoint, yeah, there's just a lot of people that either moved on because they were tired of the markups, even though these days there's not hardly any markups from what I've seen. I think a lot of people just were soured by that. And then again, the warranty claims. I talked about this again a couple weeks ago too, but yeah, with the highly publicized, couple of vehicles that either had the motors blow or, just had some problems with them. Savage Geese very well documented the track issues with the rear diff. There's a few things, with that vehicle, but I think really the biggest downfall was Toyota being skimpy with the warranty, acceptances or, lack thereof, with just denying warranty claims because the vehicle went over 85 miles per hour, supposedly. Again, we don't know the full story of all these things either. we're only kind of getting one side of these stories most of the time. So, I'd still take it with a grain of salt. But yeah, there's bad PR around that car as a result of, these warranty denials and stuff. So, I think that all those things have kind of discredited the car a little bit in the enthusiast community, since again, so many enthusiasts do mod their cars and do, beat the crap out of them and want them to, be robust and be 2JZ levels of reliability where you can boost it to 1,000 horsepower with no mods or no internal mods. It's just like, I think people have unrealistic standards sometimes too for that kind of stuff. But, yeah, some people are not excited about GR Corolla. I still adore it. If I needed something that was all-wheel drive and 4 doors, and I could afford one, GR Corolla absolutely would be what I'd be driving right now. But yeah, it seems like, unfortunately, not a whole lot of love in the YouTube car world these days. And it'll be one of those cars I think people will realize they, were too hard on it, and they'll miss it whenever it's gone someday. But let me see here. So Austin says, Danny, we tried to gift you a membership, no luck yet. Yeah, we'll see what happens, but I'm trying to do my best here to respond to the non-member questions too, to hopefully be able to, give a lot of people answers here, even if they aren't members. But if we do get behind, I will, start prioritizing there for sure. But Brian, also thank you. I saw you gifted a second membership. I really appreciate that. And yeah, no luck for Danny still. And let me see. Harsha says, apart from price, what are some things that really bother you about the new Mustang compared to the old one? The interior, I don't like the interior at all. I don't like any of the changes. I mean, they retain some of the old stuff, so I think those things I like, but anything that they switched from S550, I don't like. I don't like the screens, the way they did the screens. I mean, I guess the new steering wheel's fine, but the lack of buttons, all those beautiful switches and knobs that were thrown out, just all the wrong choices on the inside, in my opinion. So that's really the biggest gripe, I would say. And I mean, interior is where you spend all your time in a car, so to me, that's very important, and they really dropped the ball there. I think also for me, the fact that it isn't a new Mustang, really, it is still a heavy refresh with a few little tweaks to the chassis. But so much carryover. It's the same as Nissan Z, where it's like you're carrying over door panels, whole door panels. You're carrying over, all kinds of parts bin stuff. And, it's enthusiasts know that kind of stuff. They carry over stuff. I know that it's, it's harder to justify the price of development for these things that sell in low numbers, but like you can't phone it in with enthusiast stuff. You can phone it in with regular stuff. Like why, if they're going to part share and they're going to phone it in, like a new gen Ford Escape, sure. Go ahead and copy over door panels. People aren't going to care for an Escape. But when you're talking about Mustangs, people know better. They know this stuff. They know these cars very well. They know whenever they grab that door handle and open it from the inside, it's the same one as before. They know that, this center armrest is the same as before. Like that's, especially, we're talking about Mustang fans like myself that have been sitting in that interior for 10 years at this point. You get into that new one, and it's too familiar for, an all-new Mustang, according to Ford. They make a big deal about saying all new, not just new or new generation, but all new, which is a bold-faced lie. It is by no means all new. And it's just actual lying. It's kind of insane. And I call every car company out on it whenever they say something's all new. I mean, everything needs to be at least extensively modified if you're going to call it all new. It doesn't have to be a completely brand new design for something, but it has to be heavily redone for every single thing to make it new enough so that you can actually, claim something's all new. So I see Austin says Mustang refresh is very mid, to say the least. Yeah, that's a more concise way of putting it. But those are the main things. Exterior styling, I'm fine with. I have no complaints with it now. I still like S550 better, but I think it's completely fine on the outside. It's just that interior and knowing, you're getting kind of shortchanged as far as how they developed that car. And Cam Jam says, hope this storm materializes because we haven't had actual snow on the ground down here in 4 years. I'm also already off of school and have plans to go sledding with friends. That's awesome. I hope you have fun on the snow day there. It's yeah, it's something I love doing with our daughter here, is being able to go out and have fun in the snow again. And Carr says, had a conversation with the owner of a Tesla Model 3. Said he bought it just because he saved $15,000 in tax credits. I told him I saw the Cybertrucks, and he said he thinks they look like metal door stuffs. That's funny. I don't know where he's getting 15 grand in tax credits, because the most you should be getting on any of these things is 7,500. So unless you bought two of them, that's the only way you're going to get 15 grand off. Maybe Tesla's kicking in extra money. I don't know. But as far as tax credits, yeah, the max you're able to get is 7,500. So that was an interesting take from the owner of that vehicle. But I mean, Model 3s are dirt cheap. So if you don't have any problem with Tesla or Elon Musk or whatever, or you can separate Elon from Tesla, I mean, they are dirt cheap. And it's a good little car. Objectively, putting my car reviewer hat on, the Model 3 is a very well executed car. It has some shortcomings. These days, they are everywhere. It's the least unique car you can buy these days. I honestly think like Camrys are more distinctive than Model 3s, and Camrys look way better too. But it's some people it's just a cheap car, and I think that's where the EVs are really going to reign supreme eventually. It's just like it's good, cheap, reliable transportation. And that's all that people care about sometimes. So that's interesting though. You bumped in and we were able to talk to someone. And Callie says, thanks for your video on the black 06 Subi Hawkeye STI. I watched your video 8 years ago and had just bought a WRX. In 2022, I had the opportunity to buy a blue 06 STI, which I still have. Nice evening. I hope you have a great evening too. Yeah, that was always the dream for me. It was an 06, specifically 06. I like the 06 taillights better than the 07s. 06 STI in World Rally Blue. That was always the goal, with the gold wheels. It's I'm kind of bummed I never was able to kind of like, pursue that. But these days, I know those EJ motors are way more headache than I would want to deal with, and that whole scene is just not my scene anymore. So that ship has sailed for me. But maybe someday in 30 years, whenever they're like collectors and it's kind of a different vibe, maybe it'll be something to be fun to go back and re-explore and maybe make some content on if YouTube is still a thing at that point down the road. And Goth Rocker says, Happy New Year. Saw two 1995 Subaru SVXs and the 96 Mazda Millennia with a supercharged Miller Cycle engine. Wow. I haven't seen a Millennia in a long time. And SVXs are great. I was so happy I finally got to drive one. When was that? Like a year? It was a year ago. Yeah, I did the SVX review. I think it was the beginning of 24. Maybe it was the beginning of 23. It all kind of blurs together. But it was so cool to kind of scratch that itch and finally see what it was like to drive an SVX. And they're great cars and actually really cheap. And they seem to be pretty solid vehicles. Be a fun little all-wheel drive beater for someone who needs all-wheel drive and wants something a little stylish. The SVX is a great car. And Michelle says, hey man, the hunt for our Highlander replacement is official now. As much as we love the car, the captain's seats aren't cutting it anymore, along with the small third row. It's between Pilot and MDX now. So I think, if I remember our conversation previously, I think you were looking at prior gen Pilot and MDX, I think. Both of those are, like I said, still really solid. I like both of them a lot. It just comes down to how much luxury you want for those. If we're talking new cars, I like MDX a lot. Pilot, I think, is a little underwhelming personally compared to the other stuff in the mainstream segment. But MDX is still one of my favorites there in that premium segment for sure for new ones. And best of luck with deciding. If you have any questions, along the way, feel free to send me a message. I'd be more than happy to help give you any clarity that I can provide. But good luck in the search. And Shane says, learned about Subaru's ugliest model ever, the Impreza Casablanca. It's so ugly that I want 3 of them. I don't know if I know about that one. I don't think I've ever heard of that. I will have to look that up. Thanks for the for the info, Shane. That's very intriguing. And I'm happy to see Callie was able to get a membership here. So a nice little parting gift there before you head off to bed at 3 a.m. in Sweden. But happy to have you as a member here, and hope you enjoy being a member, Callie. Let me see. OG Skywalker says, "What's your opinion on Toyota switching over to forced induction?" It's what the industry is doing. To me, you know, it's tough for Toyota because they've really kind of pigeonholed themselves into this this what's the just expectation, I suppose, from customers for like dated stuff. Like Toyota's trying to like modernize themselves, and like people aren't having it. And, some people are fine with it, but a lot of people are just like not excited about that. And I think it's gonna make sense where it makes sense. I think they're gonna adapt to like we have some of the stuff that's turbocharged. But then we also have, other things that are just, choosing to go hybridized only, like Camry. There's no turbo motor in Camry. It's still naturally aspirated with a hybrid. We see Prius, same deal, naturally aspirated hybrid. Corolla is still naturally aspirated. I don't think that's going to change, for the next generation. So I think, for the ones where the Toyotas that were the higher end, kind of slightly more experimental in some ways. I know Tacoma and Tundra, have an expectation for high reliability as well. And I think those motors absolutely will do it. But I think, for those more demanding applications, you had to go forced induction because you can't just do these gigantic engines anymore. I mean, I guess maybe for the next 4 years you can, but it's everyone's going towards, just better emissions regardless of, who's president. So it's just something I think they needed to do for those higher segments. But I think that we're going to see, they realize the hybrid thing is a huge hit, and finding more ways to hybridize better for that heavier duty stuff, I think, might be something that makes the turbo stuff maybe a little more short-lived. We will see what happens. I don't know how those conversations are going within Toyota, if they're happy with it. I mean, I do know, I heard the spiel from the Tacoma engineer on the Tacoma launch that motor was put through not only the regular like consumer grade Toyota durability testing, which is already very high because they know people expect Toyotas to run forever, but they also put it through their commercial duty durability tests, which is even more demanding. And it's like a commercial grade motor in that thing. So they really gave it 110%. I know Tacomas are expensive these days, and you can nitpick the various other things maybe you don't like about them, but I think that they're going into it with the same mentality of let's make these forced induction motors just as good as the naturally aspirated ones that came before them. And sure, I'm disappointed in like the fuel economy of those forced induction, even the hybridized forced induction stuff. Doesn't get great fuel economy from any of those, but it's also really tough to get good fuel economy in anything that's ginormous and shaped like a brick and all that, so, but yeah, I have no problems with it personally. And Veslin says for car reviews, 30 frames is good enough. Yeah. And I mean, I did 30 frames for a long time. I mean, maybe this is, a good question. Maybe I should, I do a poll here. Just I'm curious now. I always just thought that 60 frames people thought was better, but I will do a poll here and see what you guys think. Do you care about 30 frames versus 60 frames? Maybe I try a 30 frame car review in 4K and see if that is if that's any more exciting than a 60 frame 1080p one. So let me type this out here. And I'll do one more option for don't care for those who don't even carry out what their frame rate is here. All right, so I'm gonna start this poll and curious to see what you guys think here. I got one for don't care. It's fun watching the votes roll in here. Thanks everyone for voting. And sorry, I also, Jordan, just saw your super chat there. Thank you so much, Jordan, for a super chat. He says, would tariffs delay the new Chevy Bolt rollout? It's hard to say until we know exactly what tariffs happen and how that affects supply chains, how other countries retaliate from those tariffs that could further crunch supplies. So, yeah, there's so many unknowns there. Absolutely, though, there's a very strong chance that any kind of tariff could delay the rollout of anything. It could constrict supply of even current vehicles that are out there. And as far as just production, it could very easily turn into a 2021 kind of situation where we don't have cars on dealer lots anymore because everything's tariffed like crazy, and it turned into some giant trade war. China's already talking about, cutting back on battery supplies and all this kind of stuff. So we'll see. There's a good chance that could be the case. But yeah, thank you so much, Jordan, for the super chat. I'll give this poll a little more time, but it looks like currently the majority say they do not care. So, all right. Good to know. We'll keep that going though for a little bit longer. And let me see here. Harsha says, I have heard that on average nowadays a car loan is upwards of 84 months. How are these loans approved, and how are people this oblivious to money? So yeah, 84 months is about the max these days. I mean, I have seen, for supercars, they'll go to like 120 months and all these crazy other things that are also bad ideas. But yeah, 84 months is definitely, definitely pushing it. I will say cars do typically last longer these days than they did, in prior, generations when, people were swapping cars every 5 years or something. But it's also, I think, just a symptom of the rising price of cars and the fact that, a lot of people's wages haven't kept up with those price increases, or at least people mentally have just not, adjusted for that yet. So I think there's a lot of that that's resulting in those desires for those longer loans. But yeah, obviously it puts you in a negative equity situation for a longer period of time potentially, and you don't build that equity as fast as you do with the lower terms. But it's just a personal preference thing too for some people. Even if it's a bad idea and they know it, some people was like, well, my car is totaled and now I have to buy a new car, and I don't have a choice. I need a payment of X amount of dollars. Doesn't matter what I'm paying in interest. Doesn't matter, how this loan is amortized. It's just, I need to hit this payment, and that's the way to do it, and some people it's that simple. I know shopping by car payment is not a good way to shop, but for a lot of people, that's just the reality of, what their situation is, unfortunately. It's because it's tricky with used cars because, then you get to a point where it's like, if you go for a used vehicle, you can only go back. I think usually for used cars, you definitely, I don't think you can get finance for anything that's older than 10 years. But I think a lot of the cutoff for a lot of these cars is 5 or 6 years, and then, you can't get finance. Then they turn into cash deals, and you don't have 10 grand in cash laying around oftentimes. So then, you have to kind of say, okay, well, now I need to go buy something newer just so I can finance. And then, again, it's just like you're getting squeezed there. So you got to, just stretch out that loan as long as you can just to get into a car on a monthly payment kind of basis, that a lot of people need. So it's tough for sure. And Grant, thanks so much for stopping by. He says, good evening, everyone. How was your New Year's, Matt? It was pretty good. Hope yours was good as well. And thanks for stopping by, Grand. Cara says, I'm curious what you think about the turbo flutter sound from the Toyota Tacoma Trail Hunter. With the snorkel, I feel like it makes the turbo sound like it's trying to blow itself apart. I love it. I love that sound. It reminds me of all the tuner stuff back in the day. And I think I talked about this in my Trail Hunter review last year. And I emphasized it multiple times, like, this is so cool with the way it sounds. I think recently there's been some people complaining about it online. And first off, these people aren't familiar, I guess, of what a turbocharged vehicle with a snorkel sounds like, or even just without a turbo. Honestly, you just hear a lot of that induction sound when you have a snorkel in general. A lot of people aren't used to seeing that from the factory. Maybe these are people that are just new to snorkels, but I think it's so fun and so cool. And again, I'm not a trail hunter. I'm not an off-roader. I'm not, into trucks really at all, but if I was, I think, getting one of those with a snorkel would be definitely keep a smile on my face. It'd be fun. Raphael says, my TVs are 1080 and my monitors are 1440, so 4K would be lost on me. Yeah, and I mean, as much as TV is still growing in viewership, it's still, I think it's still slightly over 50% of viewers are watching on a mobile device, where you really are not appreciating 4K. Maybe if you stretch into like giant tablets, but even those, I mean, it's really hard to appreciate 4K, I don't think, is really going to be mostly a mental thing until you get onto a really big screen. I can't remember what the science is. You can look it up. There's a science of how close you have to be sitting to your display in order to actually have your eyes be able to register the actual difference of 4K and perceive that, because your eyes physically, even if 20/20 vision, cannot pick that up at certain distances and certain screen sizes. So I can't remember the site I went to, but there's a very interesting site that's like gives you a chart of like, you have this kind of TV, this is what resolution you need if you're sitting this far away for it to be a good picture for you. So 4K is oftentimes more so a marketing thing than it is an actual improvement in experience. Brian says, I'm late. My cool car sighting was this past Friday. I saw my first Cybertruck. It was wrapped black and red. That's an interesting wrap. I haven't seen that before. When we were we did a little road trip here this past week down to Maryland to visit my friend. There was a Cybertruck that was like an iridescent, like color shifting rainbow wrap. It looked like they got the star in Mario Kart or something. And it was very much attention seeking. It seems it was really, I mean, it's actually like Beth loved the wrap. She was like, I don't like the Cybertruck, but I do love that wrap. It was really cool. But yeah, glad you're able to see your first one. Hopefully you gave them a wide berth for their slow steer by wire and their giant, what are they, 7,000 pound curb weights. And Cam Jump says, have you seen the video of the GR Corolla just randomly catching on fire on the highway? I have not seen that one. Again, I'd be curious the backstory on that, the honest backstory on those types of things. Because unless there's some weird quirk or some, just, I mean, every once in a while there's a bad apple. There's a lemon. This is why we have lemon laws. But there's no good reason why a Corolla just cruising on the highway, a GR Corolla cruising down the highway should catch on fire. And, that's something that would have, if that was a common occurrence or something that was a well-documented problem, then that would have come up in the development of that vehicle, when they were flogging it on track or whenever they were doing the thousands of miles of development driving they were doing, so those types of things, usually there's either more to the story or it's just a fluke, in my opinion. I'm always open to being wrong if, there's some evidence that suggests it's something else. But, there's lots. It's always one of those things. You have that one or two, very loud, people that are upset about their vehicle not, living up to what they're expecting, and understandably so. But, that gets distorted here on social media and having people think that's the issue for everyone. And this is one of the things that got me really freaked out about the EcoBoost, 10 years ago was I was sitting on the forums and seeing every single person that had a blown motor on their EcoBoost. They're the ones running to the forums, not the 30, 50, 100,000 other people driving around in EcoBoost with no issues. I'm sitting on the forums seeing every single blown motor that's ever happened to these things being reported on the forums, and it distorts your reality of these issues into thinking it's way bigger of an issue than it is. So I always approach those things with a grain of salt myself. And Castro says, would you rather have walkable cities and smaller / less cars or suburban car centric cities? I think it depends on the city and on the culture of the people that live in those cities. Personally, I mean, I love walkable cities and walkable areas. It was really fun when we went to the UK, being able to walk to the corner store and get the basics you need and not, have to get in a car and make it this whole big excursion. I mean, I love driving, but, there's some times where all of us is just a mundane drive, and I think it'd be nice to have some of those, things be a little more walkable. I think that car-centric cities, I haven't had a problem with them in the past. I think though, seeing just the, skyrocketing amount of pedestrian deaths because of every vehicle being taller, bigger, heavier, flatter nose, that's what I don't like seeing. I mean, we just literally in the past month, there's been 2 pedestrian deaths here in Pittsburgh. One was actually like 5 minutes from my house, and there was another one south of the city. Just people literally like, walking their dogs and, just get taken out by some giant vehicle that's probably far too big than that person actually needs, and it's just, so there's those types of things, if cars are going to continue to balloon and get out of control with their size, then I think we need more walkable cities. We need more safe spaces. We need to redesign these cities to, avoid having any kind of issue with pedestrians, whether we do bridges over intersections for pedestrians or we do other things to try and work around the cars if we can't get rid of the cars in these cities. Then yeah, I think there's those types of things. Have walled off sidewalks that have steel reinforced barriers to withstand the impacts of cyber trucks and Hummers and all this kind of stuff. Something needs to be done. I mean, America, of course, we don't care about safety at all, and it's all just about convenience. We don't prioritize safety here in America, so it's just unfortunate that people's lives have to be lost as the payment for that laziness here in America that we have. But yeah, it's a shame. But I think that it'd be nice to see more pedestrian friendly cities. We don't have to get rid of the cars, but like we need to make it safer for pedestrians for sure, especially walkable cities like New York, where you don't need to have a car. You absolutely have to prioritize, the safety of those pedestrians more than we're doing right now, in my opinion. But that involves money and investments, and who wants to invest in people, right? Certainly doesn't seem to be the trend these days. Anyway, I'll keep it neutral here. But Fook, thank you so much for gifting 5 memberships. I really appreciate that. And happy to see again some familiar faces and possibly some new ones there as well. And Veslin, thank you so much for the very generous super chat. I really appreciate that. He says, as a hobby videographer, don't do 60. It's overdone and doesn't look organic, and it takes too much space. Major shows such as Top Gear are done in 24 frames per second with proper shutter speed. 1/50th for proper motion blur. 30 is used for live productions. Yeah, I did 30 for a long time. I've been actually 60 frames since 2018, and I haven't seen any complaints from anyone about it. And I don't know, for me, maybe it's the shutter speed issue, because every time I've tried shooting 4K 30 on my Panasonic G85 that I use as my primary camera, it's a little I don't know, it's just not as smooth. Maybe I'm just been spoiled by 60 frames. To me, 30 frames doesn't look as smooth to me. I know for live productions and stuff, yeah, it is. And so maybe that's just an issue with shutter speed with 4K on my camera or something. It doesn't look as smooth. But yeah, it's something I can play around with this year for sure. I mean, I'm open to trying, new things, and I'm open to whatever. Everything's on the table, really. So yeah, I will have to experiment more with 30 and see. At this point, I try not to also obsess over the production side of things as much, because YouTube themselves have even said, like, don't spend a bunch of money on production. And I actually was just talking. I was talking to someone else who was watching. They told me they were a big fan of another YouTuber yesterday that does like adventure vlogs, and saying how like they deliberately don't use a newer GoPro because they want it to look more casual. So they use an old GoPro to give it a certain look and make it seem casual and make it so that it's not super polished, because people seem to connect with a more raw and less polished production, honestly. So it's almost like these days, like it's actually working against you the nicer and more fancy you make the videos look. Which kind of, with my laziness, kind of plays right into where I'm at currently. I'm a one-man crew, not super fancy for the production, and maybe the trends will reward me with that actually being something that's popular down the road. I don't know. I appreciate your feedback, though. Thank you so much for the input, and it's something, yeah, I will certainly look into, because, yeah, if I do 30 frames, I can be 4K tomorrow. So I'll have to look into that, and yeah, I appreciate that. Giving me something to think about there. And let me see here. So where were we here? Sorry, I'm getting kind of behind. So maybe I'm going to start just doing member questions, and then go back and try and hit some of the non-member ones here. But let me see. I'll also try and not go into tangents as much. And so Adam says, yeah, he thinks other issues with Toyotas are hurting the GRs as well, possibly. There might be some of that too. Honestly, I think a lot of people, it's just markups and then the warranty stuff. But Alexander says, "Hey Matt, do you think the CT5V Blackwing is worth 30 grand upcharge from the CT4V Blackwing? I'm considering both, and the 5 is a stretch for me, but I'm tempted." I mean, I guess it's probably really hard to test drive both of them. I'd see if you can maybe try and test drive used versions of those to get some kind of experience behind the wheel with them to see what you think about them and whether that is worth 30 grand to you or not. It's tough because I can't afford either of them, so I can't really say, if I could afford both, it comes down to how much of a stretch it is for you, because it's also no fun to be, stressing over money and not, and being super tight and, it's like, oh, I got a Blackwing, but I'm eating ramen, like that's no fun either. So like, I think, if CT4V is more comfortable for you from a, finance standpoint, just go for that. You can always upgrade down the road if you want. I think CT4V Blackwing is still a fantastic vehicle. It's still really an amazing driving experience. And in some ways, arguably, it's better. Handling wise, I'd say the 4 is better. Obviously, it's just smaller, it's lighter. And less of a back end to manage, having less power. So I love the CT4V Blackwing. So I'd start there and then, work your way up if you want. The 5 is amazing. And the 5 sounds better. And, it's just a more visceral experience because it is a little edgier and it is more power to handle. And, it's just a lot more car. So yeah, it just comes down to how much of a stretch it is for you. If you can comfortably afford the 5 still, that's still, to me, if money was no object, 5 all day. 30 grand difference, 30 grand again, it's just so hard because that means different things to different people. But it's hard to say. Sorry, I have no help here. Yeah, I don't know. If 30 grand is not that big of a deal to you, go for the 5. If it is a big deal to you, go for the 4. I guess that's the best way I can put that. Hopefully it helps you a little bit there. Let me see. Jonah, thank you so much for a super chat again as well. He says, I know I'm late to this, but as car enthusiasts and secret rail buff, we need more trains and better public transit and more walkable cities. I agree about the trains too. I was just talking to someone else about this like a day or two ago. How like it seems like most other developed countries have figured out trains and we still can't figure it out well here. I mean, we had it nailed up until the 1940s, and then buses came in and kind of screwed up that, and streetcars. Streetcars were amazing as well, and there's some interesting backstory about all that stuff, and I won't bore any of you who aren't history nerds about this stuff, but it's like we had clean city transportation with streetcars, all electric, over 100 years ago, all electric, in cities. Obviously, we had other pollution issues in cities back then, but at least the transportation was, clean as far as that mass transit. And then it got replaced with, these smoky, dirty buses. And I've heard, conspiracy theories about it was, there was some conspiring going on to get rid of the streetcars because they wanted to push the buses, and it just made cities a lot worse, I think. And same thing though with just trains. That was the main way to go, and then now everyone does planes, and planes are great, but they're not great for the environment either. It's my carbon footprint is terrible. That's why I never try and claim any kind of moral high ground whenever I'm reviewing EVs or anything like that, or even the fact we own an EV, because I'm crisscrossing the country a couple times a month, and that's way more emissions than any of you guys are probably doing driving. So I'm never able to say. It's just like, yeah, I wish I'd be able to take more trains places. I did do a couple of train trips long time ago, and I did. Yeah, there's been a few. I did a little West Coast one, going along the California coast. That was fantastic. Went from LA to San Diego on a train once. Did Rhode Island to Virginia on a train, and then from Virginia to Pittsburgh. That was great too, just very slow. And that's the problem. We have all these other bullet trains in Japan and stuff. I so desperately want to go to Japan and ride a bullet train. It'd be so cool. But yeah, I agree with you. I'm not as much of a train buff as I used to be as a kid, but still do very much have an appreciation for trains, and I totally agree with you there, Jonah. I thank you again for the super chat. And Grand Admiral Thrawn, thank you so much for gifting a membership there. Really appreciate it. Happy to see someone able to grab that. Let me see here. Getting back to the other questions, trying not to get too far behind here. Kyle says, I saw an S550 today and it made me realize how much better that model is compared to the S650, just the exterior alone in the rear. I agree with you. Yeah, I still love the back end on the S550s. And Austin says, hey, Matt, do you think the newly announced New York congestion fees will actually reduce congestion? I believe it's worked in Europe, but the U.S. is obviously a different proposition. Yeah. I know it's very unpopular in some places, in Europe as well, but I'll be curious to see how it plays out. I mean, I think the thing about Americans is, we really, and this is part of why public transportation, in my opinion, hasn't really taken off, is we really value that independence. And we pay a premium for that independence, and we are happy to pay that premium, even if it's at the expense of other things, that we sacrifice in order to have that. And I think that a lot of people still just do not like public transportation for a variety of reasons. And so will it reduce congestion? I don't think so. I think honestly what's going to do is just, be something that people just grin and bear and just pay it and add to their cost of living, because they're not giving up their quiet, ride in their comfy car in their own little comfort zone there on the way to work. That is sacred territory for some people, and having to share a bench with someone on a subway or a train or a bus or whatever, it's less appealing. I totally understand it, but I think, I don't think it's going to reduce congestion. It'll be a great, way to, drum up some extra tax money, I suppose. And hopefully that can be maybe reinvested into these public infrastructure things. We will see. But yeah, I don't think it's going to really help congestion. I mean, sure, I'm sure a few people will quit, but I'm sure that a large majority will keep on just doing the same thing and just paying the money. And Nikki says, is it true that the GR Corolla for 25 has a quiet mode and eco mode? Have you driven one yet to compare the new suspension changes? I did a 25 GR Corolla automatic DAT review back in the fall. Yeah, try out the suspension changes. I haven't lived with one for a week. And on the track that we were on, it was a very short little track, so I wasn't able to get too much of an impression. The only thing that I was really sad about was the fact that, you lost the ability to do a dedicated rear bias setting. Now, the track setting is the most rear bias, and that's 50-50 usually, but then can vary itself depending on when it wants. But you can't lock it into the 30-70 mode like you did for 2024 and 2023. So that to me actually hurts handling more from a fun standpoint than any kind of other suspension changes as far as good, bad. And I didn't drive it in eco mode, so I have no clue about the quiet mode for the exhaust there. I hadn't heard about that though. But yeah, for me personally, because I don't love the front bumper on the 25, and I don't like that they got rid of the rear bias mode. For me, if I were doing GR Corolla nowadays, I would have to go to used one, but I would go 24 or 23. 25 is still, I'm sure, fine. And if, it was that or nothing, I'd happily take it. But if I'm choosing and I'm able to choose between model years, I'd rather have a 24 or a 23. Jonathan says, FL5 Civic Type R or GR Corolla? GR Corolla for me. The Type R is more car, it's more powerful. It's a nicer interior, more space. So it's a little easier to live with. And it's fun for sure. I love Type R, and I'd happily daily one too if, GR Corolla didn't exist. But I think GR Corolla to me just has a more boosty nature to the engine. It's a little more scrappy feeling, being a little lighter, a little smaller, having the all-wheel drive. It's kind of nice around here, on these snowy days, having 265 wide tires in the front of a Type R. That thing's going nowhere in the snow, most likely even with snow tires. So yeah, for me, GR Corolla is the way I would go personally. But Type R is fantastic as well. I was very impressed with those. Although I'd pay the extra buck and go for the Integra Type S to get the more characterful exhaust. and the more distinctive styling, in my opinion. I like having the flared fenders versus the more integrated wide body you have on Type R personally. But yeah, they're all good cars. Thankfully we're spoiled with hot hatches these days. Cam says, I know at least in Maryland was doing their own credits, so that's where the 15 grand could come from. Interesting. I didn't realize Maryland was giving that much away. That's impressive. PA is terrible. There's hardly anything. You get the 7,500, and I think maybe there's another $500 from the state or something. That's about it. It's really nothing, but that's a good idea as far as our earlier conversation there. Raphael says the outside of the new Mustang's fine. They sound good. It's the inside and the phoned-in screen design. So we're on the same page there, Raphael. And Luke says, how much above invoice is MSRP on new Fords? I'm getting D plan from my brother and trying to estimate close what my discount will be. I think there's a calculator. I can't remember where, but I'm sure you've Googled by now, but if you Google like what the D plan discount is, that should be able to show you. There's no set invoice pricing. It varies. So there's a different margin for different trim levels and different margin based on different options and all that kind of stuff. So invoice is going to vary. It's going to be different for each vehicle. But from what I remember, I think it's about $2,000 difference between MSRP and invoice from Mach-E. I think the regular Mustangs were a little bit bigger, but I have no clue what it would be on Maverick. I see Adam saying they get the $7,500 in Colorado as well. So, okay, that could be it. Yeah, if it's $15,000 in tax credits between the state and the federal, that's insanely cheap. I'm still so jealous of everyone getting these free Fiat 500Es. Let me see. Dana's asking, topic of wagons, 2006 Mazda 6 V6 wagon thoughts. Those are awesome as well. Always love those. And there's even a few out there with manuals, I think, too, which is always cool. Cara says, I had to look this up. A Tesla buyer can potentially combine $15,000 tax credit by combining the federal government's $7,500 tax credit. Okay, with the state level stuff. Gotcha. All right, so that's what they're talking about then. So I see what you're saying. Yeah, about $24,000 before tax, title, and destination fees for a base Model 3. Okay, yeah. So some of these states are really knocking it out of the park. I didn't realize it was a full $7,500 for Colorado. That's impressive. Yeah, it's no wonder EVs are still selling really well in a lot of these states with that support. That's awesome. Steven says, for just the current exterior style, do you prefer the Honda Civic hatch or the Accord? For me, the hatchback style always gets me. Yeah, between those two, Accord is fine. Accord just not very distinctive. It's a nice, looking vehicle, but I definitely like the Civic hatch styling better myself. Harsha says, if the Camaro survived, we could have seen it sell a lot better now. With Dodge insulting their fans and Ford price hogging customers, the Camaro could have finally had a chance. Yeah, I think there still would be some people that, are like, all right, if I don't want Mustang, at least I can have Camaro. Some of those Challenger buyers possibly. But I don't know. Camaro's it always had a tough time for this 6th gen. I think they really they got to open up the windows and make it more of a livable vehicle, because that's the thing. A lot of these people, they'd be desperate, but if you're cross shopping the Mustang and the Camaro, and you're coming out of a Challenger, which was a bigger, roomier car, the Mustang's the next step down. If you go to Camaro, you have, a tighter interior, you have smaller windows. And I think a lot of Challenger buyers wouldn't be happy, having these little mail slots for windows in a Camaro. I mean, it's not the end of the world. You can live with it and get used to it. But I don't know. I feel like a lot of those people would still just go Mustang, which has been Camaro's problem this whole time, honestly. So I think Ford kind of just did a better job of kind of finding a happy medium between Camaro and Challenger there. Double Strike Photo, thanks for stopping by. It says, hey, Matt, glad to be able to rejoin these. This has been Tire Week. New winters for the Taycan, and hit a 6-inch deep pothole on the S6, and it put a 3-inch bubble on the side of the tire. Ouch. Yeah, that is not fun. That sucks. So sorry you've had some bad luck there. But hope you're holding up okay there with the tire budget. And glad to see that you still are enjoying the Taycan and the S6. and hope you're doing well too. And Happy New Year. And Spy Harpy says, I'm in California and got a 23 Model 3 Performance, $7,500 federal, and 2,000 state. That is all one can qualify for in California. Interesting. Okay, so maybe it's just Colorado and a couple others where it's a little bit more aggressive. Because that sounds more like what I was under the impression it was. I didn't think it was that much of a credit, but that's cool. I'm glad you're able to get a good deal on yours, Spy Harpy. And Vishal says, looking at for both MDX and Pilot. Haven't test driven either yet. Want to see both to determine if we want more utility or more premium car. Yeah, and I mean they're both going to have really good utility, and honestly, both are pretty premium too. I mean, obviously MDX is a little nicer, but it's not a wild difference. And Pilot, especially those higher end versions for the last gen, were still super nice. All the things, all the creature comforts you could want. And yeah, really nice, cars either way. So you can't go wrong with either one. And Chad says, how do you feel about the unnecessary redundancy of having an electric opening button only to need a manual way that's often in the lower part of the vehicle where it can be damaged during a crash? As far as having, like for the doors, I guess is maybe what you're talking about there. I mean, the electric buttons, it certainly is, a new opportunity to, have fun designs for the door panels and stuff like that. I still am a fan of manual, latches and openings and all that, because it is just, something you don't want to be having to be reliant on a battery for all the time, having a button there. It's not the end of the world though, but yeah, it is kind of funny that there's the redundancies on many of these vehicles. But yeah, I think it's important to have that for safety for sure. And yeah, I mean, maybe they could be damaged in a crash. I haven't seen the data on that to see if that's, a common occurrence or not, but hopefully they've kind of, made some of those things a little more resilient, if it is going to be like some kind of emergency backup kind of deal. I don't know. And Grant says, I've been watching your videos on a 1080p 24 frame TV for a while now. So your TV, I think TVs should be able to do variable frame rates. I'm not sure. Is it their TV? I don't even know enough about TVs to know if there's one that locks you into 24 frames. Because I think my TV, it's variable frame rates, and you can watch like a YouTube video in 24, you can watch it in 60, and it'll do whatever. But interesting. Yeah, I think a lot of people still have 1080p TVs, or just again are watching on their phones or their laptops or whatever, where the resolution is usually lost. I see Black Krypton says, I care about my frames per second in games, not videos. I'd say I prefer resolution though. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Austin says, I watch exclusively on my 4K TV, so if it's a choice between 4K 30 and 1080p 60, I'd still prefer the 4K. Okay, that's great to know. Thanks so much. And yeah, I guess we can end this poll here and have the final results there of that. But yeah, it seems like the slight majority still don't care. So that's good to see. It's not too big of a deal for a lot of people. And Luke says, typically I do a 60-month car loan term, and I pay up to the nearest 100. For example, if my payment's $565 for 60 months, I usually pay $600 to get rid of it quicker. That's a great way to do it. Absolutely. And Ryan says, honestly, most car shoppers could probably swing new purchases if they got real and recognized that a base Jetta or Impreza was plenty of vehicle for them. That is also true. Yeah, very, very good point. And Black Krypton says, I watch 90% of my 4K TV, or 90% of my 4K TV, but sometimes like now for lives on my phone. Okay. Yeah. That makes sense too, because with the phone, you can interact better with YouTube. So that, yeah, I can see how that would be, make a lot of sense. And that's why like these are, 1080p and, should be hopefully good enough for most people. And let me see. So Black Krypton also says, a couple of people in my town have a Cybertruck and a Barbie pink wrapped SUV Model X. Crazy. Yeah, that is, that's funny. Barbie pink. I'm sure they stand out. Austin says, hey, Matt, the Car Wizard did an interesting video about poor part availability for car repairs. Do you think that manufacturers are doing it on purpose to force us into newer vehicles? I hadn't heard about that. Without knowing anything about that, because I haven't heard anything about that. I mean, I guess my off the cuff guess is, yeah, I mean, some companies, it might be, them still trying to keep up with production, or if it's a newer vehicle, they don't have enough of a backlog kind of build up. There could be some of that going on. Because I feel like most of this COVID supply chain stuff should be caught up with by now. Um, so I'm not sure, why there's not enough part availability, but that's probably part of why we're seeing insurance rates, skyrocket. Car insurance is just getting crazy. And that's honestly like part of the problem too with car ownership. And, another thing factoring into these long loan terms, like we were talking about earlier, is, if your car insurance is adding another $100 a month onto your payment, then, that's another reason to, stretch that out. Because once you have an all in out the door cost of what it actually costs to run this vehicle, it gets a lot more expensive. But yeah, I hadn't heard anything about that. I think car companies though, yeah, I guess they make more money selling a car than they do selling repair parts. But that's a balancing act, because if insurance rates get too high, then people stop buying the cars. And there's even some people that are like shunning new cars because of all the sensors on the front and how that, really increases your insurance rates versus if you go for a dumb car, from 5 or more years ago that doesn't have the automatic emergency braking, doesn't have all these things, your insurance rate's a lot lower. I mean, it's like a really big difference. I mean, even like I remember for us, our car insurance, from just the difference of the Bullet, which I mean, the Bullet was driven way less than the Mach-E, but so this isn't a fair comparison, but like the Bullet was probably about a third of the cost of the Mach-E with, way more horsepower, a much worse driver profile, I'm sure, for how many people crash regular Mustangs versus Mach-E's. But it's just all those sensors, the battery, of course, the electric stuff obviously does drive up the price as well. But it's like, the Mach-E or the Bullet had none of the automatic emergency braking stuff. It didn't have any of those sensors to really worry about replacing if something did hit it. So there's those types of things too that some people are going for that old stuff because of some of these issues, and then that could hurt those car sales. So I don't think there's anything like that. I mean, I'm not someone that like shuts down every conspiracy theory, but I think that we are in a very conspiracy theory happy kind of society these days, when a lot of times usually it's just that there is information we don't have. And, we are used to having all the information for everything because, the internet is a wealth of information. But there's a lot of times still, and I encounter this when talking about cars, why don't they do X, Y, and Z? Why doesn't this happen? Why doesn't that happen? And so a lot of times, there's just good reasons behind the scenes that aren't always publicly, shouted from the rooftops as far as why they make the decisions they make on some of this stuff. And a lot of times, if there is some kind of, oversight or some type of, mistake, a lot of times it comes down to stupidity. Human stupidity and human error is a highly undercredited reason for a lot of the things that happen these days. Everyone thinks everyone is so smart and so conniving all the time, and it's like a lot of times there's a lot of dumb people out there that just make dumb mistakes. And so something like that, it could be a conspiracy, or it could be them trying to force us into newer cars, or it could be some dummy that's not ordering enough of these, or not stocking enough of these parts, and they're not recognizing this disconnect until after the fact. And then it could just be some actual incompetence there that's causing that as well. It's hard to say without knowing the full story. But that's interesting. I'll have to keep an ear on the ground for that and see if I can hear any more about that going forward. And Harsha says, most people also go into insane debt on cars we wouldn't touch with a 5-foot pole. I watched an audit recently, and I heard that the guy sold his car because he didn't want to change tires. So he got rid of the car instead. Interesting. Yeah, everyone's in a different spot in life. But yeah, there's a lot of people that do make some questionable choices for sure. And OG Skywalker says, if you could pick one daily and one track car from Ferrari, what would you pick? No budget. Daily, for me, I would probably go, because I have, a family. I'd love a Purosangue for a daily. And then track car, I'd have the A12 Aperta A, the convertible Competizione A12 would be my top track car. LaFerrari is tempting as well, but I just love the front engine Turbo Drive V12 kind of thing with the roof off. LaFerrari Aperta though would be another top one. So between one of those two for track car, but I love the A12, so probably would be that. And let me see. Harsha says got a 50 grand or 50K Ram. Not sure what that's. Instead he got a 50K Ram. Gotcha. That was from your past comment there. So yeah, that's pretty wild. I did not want to buy tires and then just step into a Ram. That's funny. Newton says it would be great if Beth made an appearance tonight. Yeah, unfortunately she is again busy doing other stuff tonight, but hopefully she'll be able to make an appearance here soon. I know it's been a while. And Dylan says, had you heard the rumor that Ram is contemplating making a bare bones work truck for 27 to 30 grand? I'd like to be optimistic, but I don't think it's true. I hadn't heard that myself. There's a chance because Ram Classic is going away that maybe they try and do something super cheap. But even, whenever Ram Classic went away, I remember seeing that I think a base 2025 Ram is like, I don't know what it's $2,000 or $3,000 more expensive, and you get more equipment and more power, and just other improvements over that Ram Classic, way safer than that prior gen truck and all that. It's not much of a price premium. I think that's part of why they also dropped Ram Classic. But maybe they will try and make a push for something like that. I think it'd be hard to get Ram down to 27 to 30 grand though, before incentives. That would be, yeah, I think that's a bridge too far in my opinion, but we'll see. I guess never say never. And Tom, thank you so much for the super chat. He says, I may be trading in my CT4V Blackwing for an Elantra N for more practicality and a lower payment. How disappointed will I be? How good is the Elantra N? Elantra N is very good. I see Austin saying, don't do it. The Blackwing will hold value better. That is true for sure. Blackwing is going to hold value a lot better. I mean, the N's do hold value pretty well though for Hyundai as well. So it's not like it's going to drop off a cliff like a regular Hyundai or something. So I'm going to need more context to give like a good assessment of this situation here to say, but I mean, Elantra N is a fantastic car, but coming out of a CT4V Blackwing, one is a souped up Elantra. The other one is, a souped up CT4, but it's, a better platform. We're talking a front engine rear wheel drive platform that's already inherently more sporty. I mean, I know CT4 is small, so practicality is definitely, not great for CT4, but I don't think Elantra is a giant improvement either. Again, maybe there's a financial component playing into this as well a little bit, but if there isn't any money concerns, I would argue go for a CT5V before you go down to Elantra N, like the regular V, not the Blackwing. Go for something like that. Because that's a little bit bigger, maybe a little bit more practical. Trying to think of other stuff that would be better from a practicality standpoint. Because there's other sporty things before you go all the way down to Elantra N. Again, I love Elantra N; it's fantastic, but you could even go like, I don't know how old you want to go, but you go like Chevy SS sedan, something like that, bigger still, fantastic GM rear wheel drive platform with a V8 and a manual, something like that. I don't know, but Elantra N is fantastic. It's just very different driving. It's front wheel drive, obviously. It's you have to just drive the car differently, and it's there's nothing wrong with either approach. They're fun in their own ways, but it's going to be less car. It's just going to be a different experience, but very fun. He says, I need a manual. Okay, so yeah, if you need a manual, I'm trying to think what else. I mean, I don't know how you feel about hot hatches. I mean, because the Elantra N is, if you really want practicality, I'd say go for, Integra Type S. Civic Type R, you get the really big hatch, big back seat. I'd say actually slightly bigger than Elantra N potentially. Bigger hatch, than Elantra N is just regular trunk. And those, are a little more car. I mean, not that much more car than Elantra N, but, Also would be less of a downgrade from an interior standpoint for you. I mean, not like the CT4 is super plush, but some nicer materials and something like that. So I'd probably say, one of those would probably be my stop before I go down to Elantra N. Again, if you need the money, but hopefully, I see Austin says, yeah, just eat ramen and microwave burritos, Tom. That's an option as well. So yeah, I don't know. It's a tough position to be in there because I'd miss the Blackwing for sure. I'm trying to think what else you could do. Yeah, I guess there's really nothing else. I mean, obviously I'd say GR Corolla. I see, yes, Nate saying, how about 340M Sport with manual and track pack? That's a good suggestion. Yeah, maybe do something like that. Something with a manual. Yeah, because there's the 3 Series. You got to go older for that too, because they got rid of that in the newer ones. Need 3 seats for 3 kids. Okay. So yeah, I mean, I'd say the BMW can be a good choice. What else is manual in that segment? Because all the stuff that's going through my head, TLX isn't manual. Genesis G70 I love. Those were manual just for the rear-wheel drive 4-cylinder ones. That was like for like 1 year. I think there's like last time I checked, like maybe 5 on Auto Trader, but that is a potential. What else is manual? I'd say Stinger, but that's automatic only. Yeah, it's tough with the manual. I mean, yeah, that's you really don't have a whole lot there. I mean, not to be devil's advocate here, but I also would say WRX is a slightly better daily from a practicality standpoint than Elantra N. I'd rather still have Elantra N myself as well, but if you need the most space for kids, the WRX backseat's bigger. Trunk space is actually maybe slightly smaller than Elantra N, but if you're looking for just passenger space, WRX would probably be a better bet that has the manual there. And I don't know, how much you're willing to spend on a WRX, but you do get the adaptive dampers in the TS version now with the manual and all that. But I think Elantra N is the better value, but you do get more passenger space in the WRX a little bit. So, but yeah, I see someone else saying Chevy SS. Yeah, I recommend it's SS as well. M5, older M5, that's true. That could be a fun choice. Audi RS4 with a 4.2. Yeah, if we're going old, there's a lot more stuff, just modern stuff where you have very few options with the manual there. But yeah, I'd say if you're gonna go from rear-wheel drive to front-wheel drive, especially coming out of a luxury branded vehicle, I'd probably say Integra Type S would be the move for me. Because I guess it comes down to your budget for sure. But let me see. I see S4 manual hasn't been messed up. Yeah, that'd be another good one for sure. Although that still is front-wheel drive bias. So the rear-wheel drive stuff is really, I think, like the Chevy SS or even the Pontiac G8 if you want to go older. Although that doesn't have a manual either. Man, I keep getting tripped up because there's so few manuals. It's a shame. I see Dan says I didn't turn the DeLorean. You are correct, Dan. I forgot to do that. I apologize. Forgot to turn the DeLorean there. But I guess with the live, you can see a little bit more of it there than usual, right? So you can see the whole car versus the weekly updates where you can only see the back half. And you can see the DB5 there that's usually hidden away. Let me see. Jordan, thank you for a super chat. He says, has Ford and GM ever released a vehicle together? I don't know. Maybe Danny could answer that one better than I could. I don't think so. I don't think there has been anything. I see Tom says they already had an Integra Type S. You go through cars pretty quick, Tom. That's impressive. I don't know then. I think Elantra N would, I guess, if you don't want to go older, that would probably be the best way to go. I'm guessing if you want that manual. I wish there was better options for you because there's just not a whole lot of manual stuff these days. And let me see here. Getting back to the other member questions. Trying to find my spot here. Fuchs says Happy New Year to everyone, and Cara says, regarding loans, 18 years ago, I had a 120-month loan on a 2007 Dodge Charger SRT8, a 10-year loan. I made some double payments. The finances changed. I paid a small minimum payment for a month or two. Interesting. I wonder what your interest rate was, though, because the double payments, I'm sure, hopefully evened that out, but hopefully you weren't getting too crushed on interest, because wow, I didn't even know that was available back then. That's crazy. And Goth Rocker says that Jerk Roll lost so many with Toyota's attitude. I read many have had issues, and seems Toyota is very hands off. Interesting. Yeah. I don't know how widespread it is, but that's sad if it is super widespread. But I don't know. I mean, I guess I should get to the bottom of this and figure out how many of these things are actually failing. I feel like it's got to be getting played up way more than the reality that's actually out there. Fuchs asking if Danny got a membership yet. Yeah, he did not. And I see Josh is asking or suggesting we pull our money together and go build a Nürburgring in the middle of nowhere in Arizona. I mean, there's a lot of great tracks, that are kind of these club tracks that is essentially the same thing, where you pay a gigantic club fee and get a track built. And some of these tracks do kind of borrow some components from other famous tracks, and it's kind of cool. But yeah, it'd be fun to build some more racetracks. I think it's something you could always have more of. And excuse me, Fuchs says this is Danny's year for membership. Fingers crossed the YouTube algorithm is kind to him someday. Goth Rocker says pedestrians are screwed. These battery cars and trucks are so heavy. I'm telling you, even when I am in my Lincoln Continental, these battery cars are much heavier. Yeah, it's definitely true. I think the Mach-E is just under 5,000 pounds, like 4,800 or something like that. So it's, yeah, and a lot of stuff's getting heavier and heavier. And let me see. Nate, thank you so much for a super chat. I really appreciate that. He says, hey, Matt, how compelling of an offering is a pre-owned 2023 Kia EV6 GT depreciated to the tune of 30 to 33 grand for a daily subsidized charge rates at work? That makes a ton of sense to me. I mean, anyone that's open to an EV right now, this is the time to buy it. And like now, because the tax credits are probably going away in a couple of weeks, and that includes the used tax credits most likely as well, which I think right now is about $4,000 off you get, I think, for used stuff. So yeah, you gotta move quick because it's probably not, they're gonna go up in price here in a few weeks. I think it makes a ton of sense. This is absolutely the time to buy any EV right now. They're all, heavily discounted. And I don't think that's going to be that way forever. And, that is a lot of car. I mean, that's almost 600 horsepower, and those things, I mean, they're not perfect. And, there's some things I didn't love about it if you watch my review of it. But overall, it's a really, really fun car. It's a ton of power. And for 30 to 33 grand, you really can't do better. I mean, maybe a Model 3 Performance or something, again, if you're not opposed to a Tesla, but I'd rather have the EV6 personally. Yeah, I think that makes a ton of sense, especially you can charge at work and you're not even paying for that. I don't know what you're coming out of from car standpoint, but if you are paying for anything that has gas right now and you get free or subsidized charge rates at work, I mean, you're going to, it's such a good value for something like that. Absolutely think that is a fantastic idea. Just again, I would say get it before January 20th if you can. Yeah, thanks so much for the super chat, Nate, and happy hunting if you decide to go for it. I see Adam says, I got an Equinox EV for $100 a month with $2,000 down. Wow, that is impressive. Speaking of those cheap EVs, yeah. And I've still been kicking around picking up a Fiat 500e just to run to the airport and back with for my trips whenever I don't have a press car, which is very rare. Or just having a backup car would be nice if it was cheap enough. But the Fiat, for me, if I put money down, then I would just put that money towards an Uber or something. So I still can't justify it, but I came close because right now I'm at about $200 a month is the offer that the dealer's been giving me, like $200 a month, including tax, title, license, and fees, out the door, sign and drive, zero down, like zero, first month's payment, like literally pay nothing, sign and drive, $200 a month, including taxes. and it's tempting. But again, there's a lot of times where I don't even need a backup car for months on end, and that Fiat would literally be sitting there for sometimes 3 months probably at a time. Then I'd be paying $200 a month for, a lawn ornament in my garage, basically. So it's really tempting because it's, to get a car that cheap these days. I think that's again something you're not gonna be able to do, later this year. But it's tempting. I'm glad you got a cheap Equinox EV. That's awesome. See, Austin says, be sure to get the Armani Collections Edition. I don't think they've built any of those yet. I haven't seen a single one because I think they quit production. I think actually they stopped production before that car was even announced, I think. And I don't think production is supposed to start back up for 500e until February potentially, because that and the Maserati Gran Turismo, that both share the same production facility, awesomely enough. Both of those have been idled for a couple of months now. So we will see. I see Harsha is also asking, what do you think of the base model EV6? My parents rented one in Texas. They noted that it felt gutless compared to our Tesla Model Y long range. I don't see many reviews of these basic models. It depends on, if you're talking truly base model EV6, I think the base one's got like 200 horsepower. So absolutely, that's going to feel way slower than a Model Y long range. But the regular all-wheel drive, EV6s are about, 300 odd horsepower or whatever. Those are going to feel more comparable to your Model Y there. But I agree. I wish I could get my hands on base models more, because especially base models are just such a strong value for so many of these cars these days. It's just, the press fleets don't stock them. The car companies rarely bring those out to these events. And so it's just, me going out and finding a dealer that's got a base model that's okay with me putting miles on it and doing a review and all that stuff. And there's some reviewers that do find those and do have good dealer connections and do all that stuff. It's just something that I've kind of let all my dealer connections kind of erode over the years, aside from, the used stuff that I do at a couple of those dealerships. But it's something I'd love to try and get more into in the future for sure. But yeah, I think the base EV6, from what I've seen, I've never driven one, but they seem, like a really good value still, especially for the money. And let me see here. Got about half an hour to go. Try and get caught up here as best I can. Where were we here? So, John's asking if there's any S85 V8 or V10 haters in here. The greatest engine of all time that gets the most unfair criticism, as if especially engines are supposed to be reliable like a Honda. I agree. There is some unrealistic expectations about those types of motors. But no, I love any V10. They're all amazing. And let me see. Ryan's asking, Matt, have you ever been in a topless first gen 1980s Toyota 4Runner? Never have. That sounds like a fun time though. Let me see. Let's see what I was saying about the frames per second are used intentionally. Depends on the production. Yeah. And I see Goth Rocker says, I agree. 60 frames versus 30 frames. You can at times see the difference when transitioning different shots. I see it. Yeah, definitely. There are some times where, some of my older reviews were 30, and it's a little choppier whenever you do see the switch over there. So, I've been 60 frames for so long. And the other thing I like about 60 frames too, one last thing I'll add, is that for slow motion, it makes it easier, because when I'm shooting 60 frames, if I need to slow something down because I didn't film a long enough view into the cup holders or whatever, I can slow that down and it doesn't look as choppy as it does whenever you're slowing down 30 to 15. So that's another reason why I have a little bit more flexibility with 60, but all negotiable stuff, again, comes down to what people want. But the polls seems to suggest that even a slight bit more people prefer the 60 over the 30, and then a giant majority just don't care. So good to get those instant feedbacks there with the polls. So thanks everyone once again for voting. Harsha says, when you drove the Charger EV, did you get any bad looks from Hemi people or hardcore muscle car fans? No, I mean, we spent about half the day at the track and stuff, so I didn't have a ton of time out in the public. We will, I guess, see probably sometime this spring or summer when I get the Charger EVs, for press vehicles to have for a week, what it's like out in the wild. But yeah, on my short drive, around Arizona there, Phoenix area, I only got positive feedback. People giving me a thumbs up, people staring, checking it out, being impressed. No negativity at all in the real world so far. Again, I'm sure it'll happen eventually, but I think it's one of those things where the internet once again has distorted the reality. The reception in the real world so far seems to have been very positive from a at least bypasser kind of standpoint there. Um, Brian saw a Gallardo this week. That's awesome. Yeah, don't see Gallardos around here in the wintertime, so you must be somewhere a little warmer, and that's awesome. You're able to enjoy that stuff all year round. Let me see. Jonah says, I live along the NEC, so I'm used to a 1 hour ride into the city. Joe says America has built 20 miles of underground subway in the last 30 years. Yeah, I'd love to see more. But yeah, it's always fun going on the subway, at least in the limited experiences that I have. I don't commute on a subway or anything like that. I know that New York subway has been getting some bad press the past few years here, but hopefully they improve that and gets more popular. We'll see. I see Austin saying, yeah, I'm not very safe for some of the public transportation these days. Yeah, some of it, I guess it also comes down to the city you're in and all that. It does seem though like violent crime generally, as far as statistics goes, for a lot of these cities is improving. So hopefully that trend continues and that bleeds over into the other stuff out there and the public transit kind of sector. But let me see here. Jay, thanks for being a member for 18 months now. I really appreciate it. He says, hey, Matt, great to see you. Been missing the speed factor in a car. Mostly thinking of a Nissan Z or Integra Type S for new or GTR 32 for old school. Man, well, I mean, that's obviously very different, things from a driver standpoint. I think personally, I like something a little more safer and practical. So I'd go Integra Type S out of those three. If you want the most exciting visceral raw experience, though, I would say the R32 GTR absolutely is going to be the most fun, especially if it's not something you're living with every day and it's just something to go out and have fun in every once in a while. That could be great. Z, if you can get a good deal on one, they're fine. To me, again, I'd rather have Supra, I'd rather have Mustang, some of the others. But if those ones don't appeal to you and it's just Z or Integra, I go Integra, or the GTR if you want to go something a little more old school. I mean, if you're at Integra Type S price, I don't know how you feel about R35 GTRs, but you're probably pretty close to older R35 pricing at Integra Type S. And if you're looking for something like that, I mean, you don't have the manual, obviously, but R35 is a really fun car. So that could be another one potentially to throw into the mix if you're open to other ideas. But Tom, thank you for another super chat. He says, always been an import guy, Honda Acura. I've had an FL5, Integra Type S, Golf R, and now the Blackwing. Looking for more MPG, more space, less expensive, but still fun. I see Cam says, yeah, you've had it all, Tom. Yeah, I appreciate the emoji there, Cam. I mean, yeah, I don't know. If space isn't that big of a deal, I'd say GR Corolla, but other than that, yeah, that's tough. Yeah, I really don't know. I mean, maybe the WX, again, you check the import box, you get more space. You're not going to get more MPG though. Yeah, I mean, if I look at a list of like everything that's manual, that's, decent on space, it gets good MPG, I think you've probably covered just about everything aside from, Elantra N. So it might be the last one to cross off the list, honestly. Yeah, because I really can't think of any others. I see, Jay's talking about his about the this thing here, him also shopping here. Found Z deals that are $5 to $7 grand off of MSRP in my area. I found a 2009 RS R35 with a minor accident and 97,000 miles for 50 grand. Nice. Okay, yeah. I mean, Yeah, if you're up for R35, to me, I'm a little biased, but I've always loved R35s, Jay. So for me, I'd probably go R35. But it's a special car, and I feel like they also aren't depreciating really much anymore. So it's probably a pretty safe buy, even if you don't like it. You can always hop out of it and probably not lose money on the R35s. But yeah, getting back to Tom though, I see he says a launcher, and it is. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll say is, yeah, if you're willing to go old and you're willing to go older, you also could go, like one of the older Audi RS5s. Those, I believe, I think maybe for the Sportback ones, you're able to get the manual still at some point. There was a little bit of overlap there, maybe something like that. But yeah, so many of these, especially luxury branded things, are going to have, automatic only. So yeah, I think you're kind of stuck. I think, yeah, a launcher and might as well cross off the list. Hopefully that helps you a little bit, Tom. Sorry you can't be more help. I mean, if you were flexible at all in the manual thing, I will say, like there's some really good dual clutches out there. Not the same, but if you want something that's, a little more exciting, you could go even like S3 is fantastic. You've had Golf R, you could try out S3. RS3 is very special if you go for an older one of those. Not a lot of space, but something. And you could even go like used Audi RS7, something like that. Potentially, again, not hitting all those boxes, but yeah, there's really not a whole lot else, I think. Yeah, sorry. I see Adam says S2000 checks all those boxes, right? I mean, if you don't care about space, that's a great one for sure. And also I'd say, yeah, if you weren't, there's also some good SUVs. I know that might be hearsay, but there's other SUVs out there that, if you're open to an automatic and an SUV, there's some other, fun options that way too. But sorry, we can't be of more assistance, Tom. And if I think of anything else, I'll let you know. Thank you for the super chat again. Let me see here. Where were we? You see, so yeah, we got 20 minutes or so here, but I think we're not too far behind. So hopefully I can get caught up here. See, Jonas says I need to start a rail fanning channel. Yeah, I'm not that passionate about it. I think others probably are going to do a better job than I will with that. I see Jonas also saying Robert Moses to destroy the public transit system. Interesting. I'd love to do more reading about that someday and more research. Let me see. Grant says, speaking on public transportation, Keanu Reeves uses it. If it's good enough for him, it should be good enough for the rest of us. That's hard to argue with. I agree. No, I mean, again, I've had pretty good experiences. Even like we were visiting one of Beth's friends in DC back last summer, and we took the DC subway, and it was great. I mean, it was also like super well done. The little train, kind of thing they have, and just and that one actually connects to the airport too, which is, I think, a really smart move. It's a shame that the Pittsburgh one doesn't have a rail line to go from the airport to the city, because it would make a lot of sense, I think. But let me see here. Zeus, thank you so much for the very generous super chat as well. I appreciate it. He says, low key, the best auto channel on YouTube. I appreciate that. He says, if you could only have one grade 1 Countach or grade 1 Diablo, which will society gravitate to in 20 years? I think Countach is always going to be the king there. I think Diablo, has its appreciation, and there were certainly a lot of people that had it as their poster car, on their walls. And so maybe we will have some people migrate to Diablo and won't, maybe Countach will just feel too old, or that was, their parents' generation or something as far as, poster vehicles. I don't know. I mean, maybe it's just me. I don't have a ton of love for Diablo. It's cool. I mean, obviously it's it's a V12 Lamborghini, very raw and awesome. But I just, from a, which one's a better investment, which one, would I want to spend time in? I mean, I have ridden in a Countach, and they're fantastic, very fun, very raw, very unique. And yeah, I feel like you can't beat the Countach. It's still going to be the ultimate one. I would argue, I guess maybe Diablo is probably pretty underappreciated still, because I feel like Murcielago prices are starting to go up. So maybe that opportunity has already passed, and maybe Diablo hasn't seen the same kind of uptick as Murcielago. I haven't honestly checked Diablo prices in a long time, so I don't know. But that's yeah, I don't know. I think you're probably better off with Countach personally. But my poster one, which I have two of back there, Murcielago, that's the one. If I were going old Lamborghini, Murcielago would be the pick for me. Those things kind of, are a little easier to drive, it sounds like. I've never driven them or any of these Lamborghinis for that matter. But yeah, I think I'd go Murcielago myself if they're not insane with the pricing these days compared to Diablo or Countach. But thanks so much for the super chat. And let me see here. You see, 885 says, Happy New Year, Matt. What are your thoughts on the revised 25 Mach-E with the heat pump and whatever else it's getting? Something you've already discussed. Yeah, I have discussed this. I kind of gave my thoughts in the weekly update whenever that was announced. But basic stuff, I'm happy to see the ventilated seats. I'm happy to see the heat pump. The problem is the heat pump comes at the expense of the frunk. The frunk is like half the size of what it used to be. That wasn't really publicized very much by Ford because they knew, that wasn't going to look very good for them. But that's kind of the bummer. I mean, I really don't use the frunk hardly ever. I think I can probably count on one hand how many times I've actually needed or used the frunk. But it's really nice to have in a pinch. And they're having a couple of times, where if I'm jam packing the car, having enough space for another duffel bag or whatever in the frunk there is a really nice thing to have. And, losing some of that, with the heat pump. I mean, the heat pump is probably going to be the thing I'd use more often, honestly. So, a 25 Mach-E is a possibility for us. But I'm a little, I just came across, there was a story, just in this past week of someone where their kid got stuck in the back of a Mach-E because the 12-volt battery died, and the driver got out and the driver's door opened. But then whenever they went to walk on the car and open up the rear door, the 12-volt battery was dead and they couldn't get the door open. They had to smash the windows to get into the Mach-E. As a parent, that I don't love that. And the Mach-E is one of the very few vehicles that doesn't have a mechanical way to get into the car. It's all buttons. There's no physical latch or any kind of backup redundancy to get into there. You literally got to smash windows if the battery fails, or you can jump the battery. But the way to jump the battery is you can get access to the frunk. And to get access to the frunk, that's electric as well. So it's a whole giant thing. There's like this whole headache of processes you have to go through to get into the Mach-E. So I wish they would have fixed that for the 25s. I don't think they did. And that is something that makes me a little uneasy, as much as we love the Mach-E. And even Beth was saying just last week how much she enjoys that car, and that she's actually enjoying it way more than she thought she would. But part of me wants to have a vehicle that has a physical way of getting out of the vehicle, or getting into the vehicle for that matter. Having that backup would be certainly nice. I mean, knock on all the wood, we haven't any issues with our battery, but it's just, just a little concerning. That's something that they didn't factor in there for the Mach-E. But otherwise, I think the changes are really great. I like, the column mounted shifter makes sense. And I just wish they would have changed the styling a little bit more to make it a true refresh. But other than that, I think it's pretty good. Goth Rocker says, let's be honest, the public transportation in the United States in these cities is really not safe at all. I personally know people in New York that can tell you lots of messed up stories. Yeah, I could see that for sure. It's a shame it's not better. See, Jonas, we're getting into a little bit of a debate about whether that's the just crime enforcement or the public transit itself. Yeah, which I don't know what it's like in other countries as far as the crime and how that affects the public transit there. And I see Vaticius is asking, how do I become a premium subscriber of the channel? There's join buttons here on the video page. There's a link in the description on the channel page. A variety of different ways there to join and become a member there if you're interested. And thanks for your interest. And Grant says, my state doesn't offer any incentives from buying electric vehicles. Yeah, a lot of states still don't or don't do anything substantial. But and let me see here. Let me see. Josh says Jaguar reveals a pink rectangle as a car. Camaro also butchered. Cars turning silent. ESPN ruined. I didn't heard about the ESPN thing. That's not sure what happened there, but cars all look the same. Non-distinct styling. Don't you guys see the pattern here? No coincidence. I think the funny thing, I hear the comment a lot about cars kind of all looking the same. And in some ways, I can kind of see some stuff, but then like I look back at car history and like, if you look at stuff in the past, I mean, especially you look back really like further back, you're talking stuff, 20s, 30s, 40s, everything had round headlights. And then you go even into the 50s, you had fins and there was some distinction there, but like everything had two round headlamps or quad headlamps. In 58 they switched over to quad headlamps, and a lot of similar stuff and borrowing from others. And I feel like this has just always been the way things have been. And I think honestly these days, since there are even more cars than there were before, is from a manufacturer standpoint, having so many options and styling having to be so distinct to separate all these different options. I think that cars look more distinctive now than they ever have before, in my opinion. Obviously, everyone sees things differently. I'd be curious what you guys think about that as well. But I see that a lot. I just, it's like if you like, even me being pretty good at car spotting, like it's kind of hard for me to sometimes identify like stuff from the 40s. Like, is that a DeSoto? Is that the Dodge? Is that the Chrysler? There's a lot of times it was just grills and a few other minor little things for some of the stuff, and wasn't very distinct, but yeah. And I mean, the other things there, yeah, it's a shame to see the Camaro go away. I'm excited for Jag. I think they'll hopefully have some luck here with appealing to those ultra rich people that want their distinctive cars, but we'll see what happens. I'm curious what happened to ESPN. I hadn't heard about that because I don't follow sports, but it's interesting. And let me see here. Harsha says, why is the new Volkswagen bus so expensive? It's smaller than the Odyssey and Sienna. Sure, the battery packs are expensive, but with a smaller footprint compared to the other minivans, you would expect it to be less. Well, I mean, sheet metal is cheap, so it's not really a size thing because it is, it's a little smaller, but really what you're losing is just the front overhang or the front, I'd say the passenger space is very similar to Odyssey. It's just that you have a flatter nose, and that's what you're losing from a length standpoint when you compare specs for the bus versus, the regular minivans out there. But, it's expensive because you're paying the premium for the battery pack. That's really what it is, because, you got to keep in mind too with the Volkswagen, you're getting a pretty loaded up vehicle. You're getting a vehicle that has, one of the biggest screens in its segment, that has heated, cooling, and massaging seats as standard, even in that base one. You get, some really nice stuff there in those, even, $65,000 Volkswagen buses. And you look at, loaded Sienna, they're like 57, 58 grand. I mean, I think if you try hard with options and like maybe a few dealer accessories and stuff, you can get to about 60 grand for a Sienna anyway. And typically, historically, it's been like a 5 to 10 grand premium for an EV. Just from a manufacturer MSRP standpoint. And so to me, Volkswagen bus isn't crazy. And you look at like Kia EV9 is around the same pricing as ID Buzz for comparable stuff and comparable, power and all that. So to me, and I did a review on an ID Buzz. I filmed it. I will be posting it in February. And I'll get into some of that comparison a little bit more in that. But, it's, to me, the price premium is mostly justified. Yes, it's a little more expensive than I would like it to be, but I think everyone getting upset, about it being more. I mean, it was always going to be more expensive than a regular minivan. Like to me, that was a foregone conclusion. Maybe someday they also have a cheaper one that will get closer, so there is less of a premium. We'd still be comparing a base model that's stripped out compared to a fully loaded gas-powered van. So there was always going to be the premium there, and so having a 10 grand premium, at least up until probably the end of this month, at least you have a $7,500 tax credit to, cut out some of that here, at least as far as a lease goes. And we'll see how things play out here going forward. But I think Buzz is priced reasonably well, and I will save all my impressions for the full review video. But if I had, the need for a minivan, I would absolutely be rocking an ID Buzz if I could afford it. I loved that thing. It was so fun and really, really just a fun. I'm just really into fun, joyful vehicles. That's why I love like the 500e, the ID Buzz stuff. That's in these depressing times we live in so many ways. Having bright, colorful, joyous vehicles. It's just something that's just a nice mood boost, in my opinion. But yeah, so stay tuned for more thoughts on the ID Buzz next month. But Raphael says 4 times I've driven a Camaro. Front and side views are fine. Rear has a digital mirror. I've just never seen the problem. I mean, it's something you can get used to for sure. I got used to it with all the reviews I've done on those, over the years. But it's just a big switch if you're coming out of one of the others and you're used to having better visibility, I think. But absolutely, I think Camaro is good enough that it is worth dealing with the bad visibility. If you really do value handling, because it is still better handling than the Mustang and the Challenger. Let me see. Austin says Car Wizard had to wait a few months for Hellcat drivetrain parts. Strangely, Ferrari parts are plentiful. Interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure what the disconnect is there. Let me see. I see Joe's also says, Matt Moran, I relate to you because I've also gotten older with you since the old days of YouTube. Cheers, OG. I appreciate that. Thanks for sticking by all these years and watching. I see also asking why I chose LaFerrari over an SP3. I mean, SP3 is very cool as well. I think the reason why I think SP3 doesn't have a carbon fiber monocoque, if I remember correctly, and LaFerrari does. I like the extra rigidity and safety of the carbon fiber monocoque personally, especially for a track car. Maybe SP3 has it, but I'm not sure. I didn't think it did. Austin says, hey, Matt, have you ever thought of doing a deep dive car history secondary channel, kind of like Up to Speed series Donut used to do? Could be fun. That's a lot of work and a lot of time that unfortunately I don't have. If I was financially, independent, wealthy, just like whatever, I was just doing this for fun, or I could afford to spend the time to do that, absolutely, I would love to do that because I'm just naturally curious. I love learning. And I'm fascinated about a lot of different things in automotive history that I'd love to cover. Especially, I mean, I have a huge passion still for a lot of these cars from, again, 40s, 50s, and 60s. I'm sure that stuff would probably not be as much of an interesting history thing for a lot of people, but I would love to do that kind of stuff. I just don't have the time for something like that. It's very intensive. But some of these channels that, can do like one video a month and, really make it amazing, they can make it work for them. I mean, like my buddy, Jason of Engineering Explained, he does I think he does maybe one video every 2 weeks or one video a week, maybe. And, that's enough. And thankfully he gets enough views on those that he's able to do that and kind of, have a better work-life balance than I do, which I'm very jealous of, but maybe someday it'd be fun to look into that kind of stuff. Let me see. Getting caught up here on all the other comments we already addressed here with the questions from Tom and Nate. Shane's voting for the Chevy SS. He says a friend of mine had one with a 6-speed and it was a blast. That is such a good car, so underappreciated for sure. Let me see here. Dan says if he wants cheap, get a Fiesta ST. Those are fantastic as well. Focus ST is great too. Focus RS is great. Actually, Focus RS is one I kind of forgot about. If Tom is still around and he wants to try something else new, if you get a pristine Focus RS, that could be a really fun new experience for you. That could be another good one. Good practicality with the backseat and the hatch, and still pretty modern tech. So is CarPlay and all that. Could be a good choice. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Let me see here. Where were we? Our questions here. Carr is following up on the earlier comment about him having the 120-month loan. At one point, he says the interest rate on that 10-year loan was low by today's standards, something like 5.99, but I'm really not sure of the exact number because it was so long ago. Wow. Well, yeah, if it's at 6%, I mean that's not too bad there for something like that. So that yeah, it makes sense if you need that flexible payment for sure. And you don't mind paying the extra interest there. But let me see. MD Can, thank you so much for gifting memberships there. I really appreciate you doing that. And he said, wanted to jump in quick. Danny got one from me the last stream. I gifted 10. Well, it was a Danny, but it wasn't it wasn't the Danny. It was like just someone whose name was just Danny, but it wasn't the other Danny that is in here. But I don't know if he's still commenting or not here. Maybe he's just hanging back and watching. But I don't think the actual Danny still is looking for a membership. So we'll see if the algorithm ever is kind to him. Yeah, sorry, MD Ken. Yeah, it was not him. It was an imposter Danny. Cam says that's correct. Yeah, different Danny who doesn't hang out in the live stream, which I don't know why they gift memberships to people that aren't in the live stream. It seems like, if you want to encourage that, you would, have it be going to people who are actually here on the live stream, at least people, commenting or whatever. But yeah, anyway, happy to see anyone get the memberships. It's always good to expand the membership base and hopefully get some more people enjoying those membership perks. And thank you again, MDK. I hope you're doing well. Yeah, let me see where we were here. Let me find my spot while I get a drink. I see Dan says my buddy has the first year GR, no issues, runs it hard every day. Happy to hear it. At least one positive report out there on the internet. That's good to hear. So thanks, Dan, for contributing that. It's not all bad all the time with some of these cars when you hear these horror stories. And let me see. OG Skywalker says, how do you feel about the new Ioniq 5? Better than the other ICE cars in that price range? I love Ioniq 5. It's great. Really, yeah, great styling, very well executed. And now for 25, it finally has the rear wiper, which was my biggest complaint with it. Now it has the rear wiper. It's good to go. I love them. I think, yeah. And as far as compared to ICE vehicles, I mean, it's, more expensive. You're paying what would otherwise be a premium gas powered vehicle for the same money as, at least MSRP wise. I mean, you can get a stupid cheap deal on an Ioniq 5 lease right now. Again, up until the end of January, probably. But that's, if we're talking MSRP, it can be hard to justify if you don't care about the EV thing. But yeah, for leasing right now, absolutely. You can get an Ioniq 5. I've seen some people advertising like, $200 a month before taxes and stuff on those. And they are, yeah, really a good car, especially if you're talking anything under, $500 a month. They're really a solid buy, I think. And Cam Jam says drove an RLX Sport Hybrid last weekend. It was so quiet and really well built. Looked great too, and that thing hauled butt without even having to rev the V6 past 3,000. Interesting. Yeah, those are so rare. I don't know where you came across one of those. That's awesome. But yeah, I think I drove a regular RLX a long time ago. I worked at a car dealership, but yeah, I see an RLX every once in a while, but I don't think I've ever even seen a Sport Hybrid one out on the road. Very rare cars. That's awesome. Thanks for the impressions on it there. Cam Jim says, who we haven't seen in a while? Richard Simmons or whatever that guy's name was. Yeah, the weird spammer. Yeah, thankfully he has gone away. Not the actual real Richard Simmons, who, may he rest in peace, was a great person it seems. But yeah, no, the spammy guy thankfully has found better things to do with his life, I guess. So that's good to see. But yeah, I'm happy that he has not returned. And Trent Garguy says, greetings, just got done watching a movie. Hope you enjoyed it. Yeah, I always love a good movie. Ben says, are you supportive of a Raptor Mustang, or does it seem like an abomination to you? Someone else just asked that earlier in the live stream too. I don't know if there's like been new videos put out about the Raptor Mustang or something that's driving the new interest here. But yeah, I mean, I was open to it. You know, whenever that rumor first went around a year or two ago, I thought, you know, it made a lot of sense. Ford seems to have since shot it down. I think, you know, back in the middle of last year, they said that we're not going to do any kind of, you know, off-road Mustang or anything. But who knows if they're telling the truth or not, you know, so we'll see. But I think it would make sense. I mean, as far as abominations, it's not any worse than a Mach-E to me. So, you know, it'd be kind of cool to kind of democratize in a way the, you know, high-end car Storado stuff, you know, we see in the others, and bring that down to a more affordable price point, even if it is 75 grand still or whatever, still would be, you know, way cheaper than those others. So I'd like to see it. You know, I would never want one personally, but it'd be fun to see. And let me see. Dan says Michael Scott said people poo on the subway. Maybe there is some of that. Who knows? That would be not an ideal public transit situation. But anyway, I see we're actually over the 2-hour mark, so I'm just going to quickly hit the last few member comments and questions here, and then we will head out. So Harsha says, with more walkable cities, cars will be forced to shrink to adapt to new roads. Until then, they will only get larger. Yeah, that would be nice to think that, you know, if there's less roadway, then we shrink the cars maybe, but I don't know. I think big cars are here to stay. I think especially with climate change, you know, getting more extreme, I think a lot of people like sitting up higher. They like the bigger feel and everyone having bigger cars around them. You feel safer. If everyone else is in a truck, the least you can do is be in an SUV. So that way, at least you're sitting up fairly, you know, high. And, you know, I think there's just a lot of people that like the adventure ready thing, because a lot of people are seeing, you know, crazier weather than they've seen in the past. And so having that capability, even if they don't go camping every weekend or whatever, is, I think, really appealing to a lot of people. So I think it's going to still be, you know, something that has some staying power with these rugged, bigger vehicles. I don't love it, but, you know, to me, that seems to be the trend, and I don't see that changing, unfortunately. But we'll see. You know, trends can be fickle and illogical a lot of times as well. So we'll see what happens. But let me see. I think, yeah, a lot of these comments we were talking about already with the super chats. So Harsha says, if cars get to the size of the original Mini or the 500 due to a changing infrastructure, could we see a renewed interest in cars, as these would be mini speed cars? Yeah, I mean, maybe, but yeah, I just, like I said, I feel like it's just something to be really hard once you have all that space. Going back, you know, it's tough. I mean, there's some people that make the switch. It's kind of like people that move out of a giant house and move into a tiny house. For some people, you know, maybe it's something that works for them, but I think a lot of people, you know, it'd be unthinkable for them to do that, you know, and here in America. But we'll see what the trends bring. And Jay says, lots of Z06 running around in my area. Still might lose, but it's a thought for now. Thanks for the feedback, Matt. Absolutely. Thanks for stopping by, Jay. And let me see. I see people talking about other stuff. Tom says, talking electric discounts, maybe Ioniq 5N. I mean, again, if you're open to not having a manual, I love Ioniq 5N. It was my favorite car I drove in 2024. And I don't know how many discounts there are on this, because they are still fairly fresh. I'm seeing, again, EV6s are hugely discounted for the GTs. But Ioniq 5N, I haven't seen any big discounts yet. Maybe they're starting to do some. If that car, I mean, it is a little pricey. If that car gets cheaper with discounts, I mean, that only sweetens the deal. I love the Ioniq 5N for sure. So if you have that kind of money and you want something really fun and something a little different, I think that is a really fun choice as well. So yeah, I see just a lot of discussion here about Tom's predicament, and I'm happy to see everyone else chiming in with that too, to give some more opinions here. It's always good to see. Joe says, what car mod has made you laugh the most? For me, it was a classic Volkswagen old school bus, and the horn was a whistle like, woo. Is that stock now? Thinking about it, I don't think so. I think it just, but they had like the old timey horn, but I don't think it sounded quite like that. I don't know. Car mod that made me laugh. I think blow off valves always were like a fun one that, or a fun little surprise whenever a car did a blow off valve. Otherwise, I mean, the only, like, it's not really a mod. The car things that make me laugh is the occasional bumper sticker, that's really funny. Little funny mods, that sometimes I'll see. Someone puts a sticker on their rear wiper so it looks like a dog tail or something. Those types of things are, I guess, the things that kind of make me laugh every once in a while. But I don't see too many mods that make me laugh. Maybe I'll think of something eventually, but nothing jumps to mind. And Pure Vibe says, Happy New Year, people. Been watching since Super X fan. I really appreciate all those years of support. Yeah, I think I made that switch in 2017. And so, I mean, we are, coming up on like almost 8 years of being Matt Maran Motoring still. And it's time flies, but I'm so happy that all of you have stuck around and still enjoying the videos. And it means a lot. So thanks so much, Pure Vids or Pure Vibes. Let me see. Cam says, I personally keep cars for long. That's why I lean towards the Honda, but it depends on circumstances. Hondas are a good one for long-term reliability. I was just talking to someone again yesterday, talking cars with someone, saying how that's why they love Honda as well. All right. Let me see. Yeah, I see Harsha says, time to wrap up here. I agree. So let me see. I think we've just about caught up here. Steven says, it appears the Mach-E does not have a spare tire. If so, not having a spare tire is not a deal breaker for you. No, because we drive such short distances. We've only road tripped it kind of twice, I guess. And even those weren't super long trips, but yeah. The Bullet didn't have a spare tire either. And I drove that thing, I did a bunch of road trips on that. And knock on wood, I was okay. Got a couple of flats in the Bullet, but they were always really close to home, and it was a slower flat. It didn't go completely flat, so I was able to kind of limp it home. So yeah, I mean, it's obviously great to always have a spare tire, but yeah, not something that is a must-have for me personally. Certainly is a nice thing though. But I think most EVs don't have a spare tire, honestly. A lot of them will do a run flat or something, which would probably be the way I'd prefer to go, is just have a run flat, and then you don't have the inconvenience of the spare and the safety concern of changing a spare on the side of the road, because that continues to get more and more hazardous every day with, again, all these gigantic vehicles and people not paying attention behind the wheel. But spare tires are definitely nice to have though, if you can get one. Austin says, have a great week, everyone. It's back to work for me. Same here. Yeah, I think it's everyone's having the collective groan of going back to work after a long holiday for many people. For me, it never really stops. So it's it's not much of a switch. So whenever you don't have that, you can't lose it. And so it's not quite as miserable for me. But I'm best of luck to all of you that have to go back into the office or whatever after the long break. That's got to be tough. And Tom says, you'd say WRX TS over Elantra. I watched your TS review. It seemed lackluster of an experience in the WRX. Yeah, I think just the only redeeming quality for WRX is the bigger back seat over the Elantra. I think it's just a little bit more spacious for WRX. That's the other reason why I say WRX. If you don't care that much about gaining an inch or two of legroom, absolutely Elantra ends I'd much rather have over the WRX TS for sure. Yeah. And Chase says, thank you for whoever gifted me a membership. I'm so glad you're able to get one, Chase. Thanks for stopping by. Looking forward to chatting with you more in the future live streams. I see also says, this membership is personal, dude. I'm still upset about having to give up my 23 Mustang GT last year. Well, I'm sorry you had the same bad luck as me of having to get rid of your Mustang. I can 100% obviously can relate and understand. Hope you're able to get one again soon if that's what you want to decide to do at some point, but hopefully get into a position where you can have another fun car very, very soon. And sorry to hear that was your 2024 as well. Let's see, Cam says, won't for people who don't qualify for tax credits, it'll be a better time to buy an EV because prices will have to be lower to sell to everybody else to compensate for no credits. Yeah, we'll have to see. We'll have to see how things play out. because you say for people who don't qualify for tax credits, the nice thing about the way the tax credits were structured was that, yeah, I mean, some of the car manufacturers didn't qualify, but for people, you were able to take the discount at the point of sale. And so, I mean, I think most people qualified for the tax credit, so it wasn't really, I think, anything that really hurt EV sales so much as far as that component goes. Because especially with the lease deals, the tax credit goes back to the financer, so everyone qualifies for the lease tax credit. So that's an equal opportunity thing with that, which is great. And car companies are, some of them sometimes have tried to compensate. I know back whenever the tax credits were phased out and sunsetting, car companies tried to, maybe go halfway down and maybe do a discount of, 3750 or something to try and, lessen the blow of losing that tax credit. But it still is, they can only go so low on these things to keep their profit margins whenever, again, the profit margins are so thin on the EVs already. So I don't think that they can just be like, oh yeah, sure, we'll just drop the price by $7,500 because the government's not doing it anymore. It'd be nice if it worked that way, but the reality is you're not, it's just going to get more expensive. And by how much we will just see, I guess, in a few weeks. So we will see. Let me see. Joe says spinners make me laugh when I see them now. Honestly, I get so excited. They're pretty damn rare, at least for me. Yeah, spinners. I saw car spinners maybe a year or two ago, and I was like, oh man, that brings me back to the good old days. Whenever that was a more common thing. And yeah, since I kind of grew up in that era, for me, like these days, it's fun seeing spinners. I know back when they were new, a lot of people were rolling their eyes at them, and I probably did a little bit as well. But these days, it's fun to see, I think. Maybe that'll come back. That'd be a fun trend to come back. If we can have all these other, fashion trends come back, let's bring back the spinners. I'd say I'm fully in favor of that. Just add a little more fun in the world. But anyway, I see Trent Car Guy says, yeah, have a good week, everyone. And lastly, I see Chase is asking, what are your thoughts on the new Highland Model 3? I haven't driven it. I haven't even sat in it. But it seems like the changes are changes that are very much overdue. Having ventilated seats finally, the other nice little touches. It seems like it's a really nice improvement. If, it's just, yeah, I think it's a nice improvement for what was already a very good car. So they did a good job on the changes, I think. I wish they would have changed the styling a little bit more, but I think it's enough, for a refresh, and it's fine. Personally, I'm just not a fan of Tesla these days, but if, you don't have anything against Tesla, I think the Highland is probably a nice, upgrade over the prior, version as well. It's tough to argue, though, with how cheap non-Highland Model 3s are. So it really comes down to a money thing. Are those improvements worth the price premium? Because now it's going to be a bigger price premium for a new one versus, a 20 grand Model 3, it just comes down to how badly you want cooled seats and, a few of the other little tweaks there. It says, I'm considering the updated Model 3. I just don't know for sure. Yeah. So all comes down to, the money component, I think, is really the biggest differentiator to sway you one way or the other there. But hopefully it helps you a little bit, Chase. And so thank you all so much, though, for tuning in. And I'll be back next Sunday for more chatting here for another 2 hours. But in the meantime, hope all of you have a good week back here with your work, school, whatever the case might be. Hope you all have a good start here to your 2025. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Stay tuned for some more good reviews here coming up this week. Take care.